Okay, getting ganked is the literal worst. It's arguably the most annoying thing about playing League of Legends, or at least once you've muted your teammates, that is. In fact, over time, players have constantly argued that League may actually be more fun if the jungle role didn't exist in the first place, so you can lane in peace. But the jungle role is here to stay, and there are easy ways that you can avoid getting ganked that we're certain you're not using, causing you to get ganked more, meaning you die more, and overall have much less fun in League of Legends than you should be having. So stick with us. We promise if you absorb the following information, you'll learn to become the player who instead frustrates the enemy jungler and wastes their time instead of being a free bag of gold every time they enter your lane. This is how to become ungankable in Season 10. The first thing that you should know is where to ward. Most players ward the nearest brush to them since it's the most time efficient method as you leave lane for the shortest amount of time. This is a lazy ward that won't save you in most cases. Seeing the jungler with your ward after it's too late does nothing, and you'll die or burn flash to these ganks. To deal with this, players rightly opt for river wards. The more time that you have to react to the jungler, the better. River wards will save you. The problem is that most players mess this up as well. They see high elo players use them, or they know they need more time to react, then place a river ward, which again ends up getting them killed. This happens because they don't understand the logic behind their placement. To place a perfect ward, you have to think about a number of things, which we'll talk about in a moment. Before that, we're going to give you the best autopilot ward spots in the game that will most of the time save you from ganks throughout the entirety of the lane phase. Once you memorize these, you'll have less to think about in-game and can turn up your Spotify, so listen up. For top, it depends what side you're playing on. If you're on blue side, the best autopilot ward is here as it gives the most value since it scouts both river and tri-brush ganks. But if you're playing on the red side, this ward leaves you vulnerable from the tri-brush. On red side, ward the tri-brush to avoid tower dives, if you're near your tower, or ward the river if you're playing far up and expect to be ganked. These autopilot wards are the same for bot lane, just reversed. For blue side, ward here to be defensive, and here for aggression. And red side, use this river ward to spot ganks from both angles. For mid lane, there's two autopilot ward spots. For the left side of mid, use this ward as it spots ganks from both the jungle entrance and the river. And the right side is the same thing. These wards give you the most info possible as to where the enemy jungler could come from. But why are we encouraging autopilot wards? Well, we watch a lot of platinum players and below every single week. The majority of players don't even ward before 4 minutes, and when they do, they autopilot their wards in the wrong spots, often making them totally useless versus ganks. By remembering where the best spots are without thinking, you'll start avoiding ganks even if you're unable to kick this bad habit altogether. Here, Syndra places an autopilot ward in the wrong spot, the river brush. It doesn't cover the jungle entrance where she'd see Kindred jump over the wall and she goes down. Next time you die to a gank, cross-check it with our autopilot wards and you'll likely find that it would have saved you. So with our autopilot wards now locked safely into our memory, it's time to address the most dangerous part of the lane phase that you're in total control of, the first 4 minutes. The most predictable and easy to play around ganks in the game are generally the first jungle ganks, yet players always die to them. Junglers always telegraph their pathing right at the beginning of the game, especially in low elo. All you have to do is read where the enemy jungler started by scouting which lane leashed them, information obtained by seeing who gets to lane last because they were leashing. To simplify, there's generally 2 routes the jungler will take based on what type of champion they are. For farming junglers, they will clear their jungle and head towards the scuttle crab at around 3 minutes and 20 seconds. Afterwards, they look to gank one of the 2 adjacent lanes after the scuttle take. For gank heavy junglers, they tend to do both buffs and gromp for the quickest level 3 possible. Then they gank a lane, killing 20 to 30 seconds, both providing pressure for their team but also buying time for the scuttle crab to spawn. After ganking, they take the crab into more ganks and go back to farming. This style is easily punished as a laner if you're aware that it's coming. So ganking junglers finish their route at around 2 minutes 30 into the game. The punishable part of that is that they want to buy time until scuttle crab spawns since they can't clear efficiently. If you deny them any gank opportunity, then they'll be wasting around 45 seconds of game time because they can't really do anything else. Instead of getting frustrated by their ganks, you'll be the annoying laner who is impossible to gank. But how do we survive these early ganks? Well, just place your ward to cover the direct path from the enemy jungler's end location to your lane at around 2 minutes and 20 seconds at the latest. The Autopilot Ward we suggested earlier are all already generally good at doing this. As for farming junglers, remember that they want to do full clear into Scuttle Crab almost all the time. Place your ward in the river, if possible, to spot them as they do the crab. You can place these wards at 3 minutes and 10 second mark to see exactly when they start to scuttle and what they do afterwards. Now, there is something players mess up far too often in the first few minutes, which we're about to see from Malphite. And then the Syndra. What mistake did they both make? The answer is pushing the second wave to the enemy tower. This is never a good thing. You don't have enough gold to buy anything off of a recall, and it's hard to punish your opponent for last hits with such a weak crash. The consequence is leaving the third wave slowly pushing towards you, making you vulnerable to that first gank. Anyway, jumping back to warding, we've covered it a lot here, and you should know that these are junglers who break the rules behind these warding spots. They are the ones that make you want to claw your eyes out in both the early and later stages of the game. They all fall into 3 categories, and there are unique warden spots that you can use to counter all of them. First up, we have Predator junglers, or any champions that just run really fast towards you. Shallow wards won't cut it. By the time you see them, it's already too late due to their absurd movement speed. But movement speed is all of their mobility with the exception of Gragas. Therefore, warding against these guys is simple. Just ward a bit deeper into the enemy jungle or river whenever possible, giving you more time to react and walk away from their ganks. Then, there's the stealth junglers everyone loves playing against. The problem versus these guys is that they have the tools to easily avoid any wards you may place. So, the trick is to ward their actual jungle camps instead. This way, you can make educated guesses as to where they'll go and be after you see them farm. For example, you see Evelynn doing Raptors and path toward Krugs. Now top lane knows to play safe, while mid and especially bot lane can play aggressive for a while. And lastly, there's junglers with global ultimates. Warding against these guys is like a mix between stealth and fast junglers. You want to place deep wards in their jungler to spot them as they are walking around looking for an ultimate play. But at the same time, you want these deep wards to generally be between jungle camps. Unlike stealth junglers, you don't need to see them actually doing the camp, so you want to see what routes they're taking in between their camps to better predict which lane they'll use ultimate on. Okay, so after laning phase, it's a bit harder to predict exactly where the enemy jungler will be. There's no perfect solution to avoiding ganks at this point, but the most consistent thing that you can do is timing your aggression with knowledge of where the enemy jungler is. If you have no idea where the enemy jungler is, then it goes without saying that you shouldn't be looking to play aggressively, since you don't know if you'll get ganked at that exact moment. The issue is that this is a two-part problem. We saw Galio playing aggressively and getting ganked, as he had no idea where the enemy jungler was. Or did he? Without skipping back, was there any way to have known where Ivern was before Galio engaged? If you spotted the vision plant at the beginning of the clip, pat yourselves on the back. This works all the time in low elo, since junglers hit the plant on autopilot without considering that it reveals their position. There's no doubt that if Galio knew Ivern was in the area, he wouldn't have initially engaged. We highly recommend the timeless tip of setting a beeping noise to beep every 3 to 5 seconds while you play League. If you use it as a reminder to always check your minimap every time it beeps, your map awareness will skyrocket, and you might surprise yourself at how hard it becomes for you to get ganked when you're hyper aware of everything going on around the map. Then, when you do scout the jungler on the minimap, there's something you should do as well. What do you think that is? The answer is to pan your camera onto the enemy jungler. Just looking at the minimap to gather information will tell you the jungler is always a threat. But that is not the case. They'll often be too low on health to gank you, and by looking at them, you can obviously see their health and mana. You can also gather even more information, such as what buffs they have, and this can help you to predict where they'll path next or where they've been. Alright, we've covered a lot, so let's quickly recap. You want to track the enemy jungler's starting position. If they're aggro junglers, place your ward at 230. If they're farmers, 310. And don't push the second wave. Our favorite warding spots will do the trick most of the time, but remember to also take into account the type of jungler that you're against, since these may not always work. Despite following these warding guidelines, you will lose track of the enemy jungler as lane goes on. When you lose track of the enemy jungler, don't play overly aggressive. Keep a keen eye on the minimap to track their location. Once spotted, pan your camera to assess their threat level and gather pathing information. This will then allow you to judge whether or not you can continue to play aggressively or if you need to respect the enemy jungler. Okay, so we want to make sure you know about the #1 hyper improvement platform for League of Legends, skillcapped. We release over 10 of these premium guides every week on our website, which add to the largest catalog of LoL guides on the internet. We've packaged these into over 100 challenger tailored courses that are exclusive to our subscribers. We also have an improvement guarantee. If you don't significantly improve while using skillcapped, you can claim a full refund. With direct pro coaching and a Smurf live commentary page on top of everything else, you'd be crazy not to check us out right after this. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.